Hello everyone and welcome to episode 11 of the PvM Hub. If you're unfamiliar with the series, these are a collection of beginner-friendly revolution guides aimed to teach players the basics of Runescape 3 bossing. With that in mind, these guides will not be optimal, but simply a good starting point for those just starting out on their PvM journey. If you end up enjoying the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you like more than one of my videos, please consider subscribing. I upload videos every Monday and Friday, and I stream casually on Monday nights. With that out of the way, let's get into today's boss, the General of Sliske and the Faceless Man himself, Gregorovic. Located in the northeast of the heart of Gielinor, Gregorovic is an interesting boss in the fact that he is the least killed and most difficult in all of God Wars Dungeon 2. That means his rares have an inflated price that you can take advantage of. His big draws are the dual-wield Shadow Glaives, which are tier 85 dual-wield range weapons, and the Crest of Sliske, which is used to make the Anima Core of Sliske armor pieces. As always, the guide will be broken up into a few different sections, all timestamped in the description, and those sections will be the recommendations and requirements, setting up your revolution bar, the important facts and mechanics of the fight, and then a full fight breakdown. For Gregorovic's requirements, he requires you have 80 prayer and 40 kill count to start a boss instance. In terms of recommendations, this time we will be using range. I'll be using two-handed range, but dual wield will be almost the exact same. I would recommend having 80 range with a royal crossbow, at least 75 defense for augmentable range armor, but we'll get into that in a second. Obviously, you'll need 80 prayer to start this fight, but if you're on normal prayers, make sure you have rigor unlocked. If you're on curses, use deflect range and the range leeched curses. Gregorovic will deal a lot of damage, so for this boss I would recommend bringing a Beast of Burden. I'll recommend 67 for a War Tortoise if you're struggling with food. This will be the first boss where Invention will be super useful. The Venom Blood perk will allow you to negate an entire mechanic of the Gregorovic boss fight and will be incredibly valuable for you. If you don't have Invention unlocked but really want to do Greg, you can use Irit Incense Sticks for roughly the same effect, but they're not as good. Super anti-poisons will also not be as helpful, as Gregorovic can corrode your protection through these potions and they will wear off almost instantly. In terms of gear and supply, you'll need around 2.5 mil, and if you're using a royal crossbow like I am, you'll need 70 smithing. But this is a great weapon which will allow you to do tons of high-level PvM for very cheap. For my setup, I'm bringing almost full superior spined armor, which is tier 65 ranged power armor. This is the same armor we use for the Kriarovic as well. For my leg slot, I'm wearing dinosaur chaps. I'm choosing these because they are the least expensive augmentable range armor that there is. I've perked them out with Venom Blood, and you can get Venom Blood very easily in a normal gizmo shell using 5 healthy components. If you want more information on that, type /wiki Venom Blood in your chat bar, and it'll bring you directly to the wiki page. I'm also bringing an Archer's Ring, an Amulet of Glory, and for my cape, I'm using the Ava's Accumulator from the Animal Magnetism quest. This isn't required, but it's a good early game range cape slot if you can unlock it. My inventory setup is also very important for this. More specifically, my food choice. I'm bringing green blubbered jellyfish. These guys heal 500 per click and take 3 clicks to eat fully, meaning 1500 heal per inventory slot. The good thing about them is that they don't drain adrenaline when eaten like normal food does. Since Greg does a lot of constant damage, we will be constantly eating, and these blubbers will allow us to continue DPSing without losing adrenaline. If you eat normal food at these stats with this gear, odds are good you will not be able to finish the kill, even if your food heals more per slot. For this method, I'd also recommend keybinding your Eat Food button to an easy hotkey. For me, I have it set to V. You can find this button in your Constitution tab. Other recommendations would be completing the Tales of the God Wars mini-quest in order to earn some extra reputation in a faction of your choice. Earning more reputation will allow you to lower the drop rate of the boss's rare drops, and will be super helpful if you're planning on making money. The invention perk Venom Blood, as I said before, will also be insanely helpful and borderline required for this boss. It'll allow you to skip one of the most punishing mechanics of Gregorovic, so if you have an invention unlocked and augmentable armor, I would strongly recommend it. After that, activating any of the following auras will greatly help you with your kills, those being Reckless, Sharpshooter, Penance, or Vampirism. Now let's talk about your revolution bar. If you're unfamiliar with Revolution, it's a system in Runescape that will automatically use your abilities for you from left to right. To take advantage of that, we'll put our strongest abilities furthest left so they get used most often, weaving in our threshold abilities which require 50% adrenaline. On screen is a bar recommended by the PvM Encyclopedia for what is optimal range Revolution bar. Below that is my version of the same bar, but with all the expensive and difficult unlocks taken out. Keep in mind that Needle Strike and Dazing Shot are interchangeable depending on whether you're using dual wield or two-handed. From left to right, the optimal bar reads Fragmentation Shot, Corruption Shot, Snapshot, Rapid Fire, Needle Strike, Snipe, Death Swiftness, Binding Shot, Tuska's Wrath, Binding Shot again, and Piercing Shot. For abilities not in the bar, they have Shadow Tendrils, Bombardment, and Dead Shot. For the bar I will be using, it reads Fragmentation Shot, Dazing Shot, Snipe, Snapshot, Rapid Fire, Binding Shot, Ricochet, Bombardment, Dead Shot, and Piercing Shot. And for abilities not in the bar, I have Devotion and Debilitate. In terms of mechanics, Greg can seem a bit complicated at first, but once you understand it, it becomes very simple. Greg has 3 mechanics that he will do constantly, and then 1 mechanic that he will do twice at 2 different health thresholds. The first thing that you should know is that you always stand out of melee distance from Greg. If you are in melee distance at any point, he will deal high amounts of melee damage and you will die very quickly. Always make sure you have at least 1 square of distance between you and him. At 140k and 60k health, Gregorovic will spawn shadows that he can swap between and that will attack you with basic auto attacks. These shadows only have 3000 HP each and can be easily taken down passively with your AoE abilities like Ricochet and Bombardment. They aren't too much of a threat individually, but try not to let too many of them pile up. His 3 mechanics will all be separated by 2 auto attacks. In order, they are Trick Knife, Summon Spirit, and Glaive Throw. Trick Knife is by far the most dangerous ability he has, and will be what we focused on the most. Gregorovic will throw a dagger at you, bouncing between you, him, and any clones currently alive. This attack is 100% accurate and can deal up to 2,300 damage at a maximum. Our response to this will be whenever Devotion is off cooldown, we will use it to block the damage. You'll be able to block every second dagger with this, so for the times in between, we will be using Debilitate. If your Debilitate lands, the dagger should only be doing around 300 to 400 damage on average per bounce. Regardless, make sure your health is high enough to tank a few hits from it, just in case. The Summon Spirit ability is a rather complicated ability, but it's also the one that we can negate completely if we have the Venom Blood perk on our equipment. Gregorovic will say, Rise, child, and will summon a red spirit that will come towards him. If the spirit is uninterrupted and reaches Greg, he will absorb it and permanently gain a buff for the rest of the fight. There are 3 different spirits and buffs depending on which side of the arena he's closest to. In the west, there's the Spirit of Rage, which will increase the amount of damage Greg does with his attacks. In the north, there's the Spirit of Delirium, which will increase the amount of poison damage he does. And to the east is the Spirit of Mania, which will increase his attack speed. Since the Venom Blood perk negates poison damage, we will always be standing in the north of the arena, so the Spirit of Delirium spawns every time. This way, he will gain no buffs over the fight, and we no longer need to worry about the ghosts. Even if you don't have Venom Blood, taking Gregorovic to the north is still a much more viable strategy than anything else, as the poison is much easier to tank than Greg's buffed auto attacks. The final ability is Glaive Throw. Gregorovic will throw his glaives up in the air, and debris will rain down onto certain sections of the floor. You can tell the areas by the dark shadow they get moments before the damage hits. Move or surge to a safe location and continue to DPS. Be extra careful though, as it looks like these are 1x1 squares, but they can actually hit in a 2x2 radius, so give yourself some extra breathing room when choosing a location. A few unnecessary tips you might want to throw in: if there happens to be shadows alive when Greg is about to throw a dagger, you can kill them with Devotion active to gain a few more seconds of protection. Additionally, I've found that while shadows are up, if you surge to avoid the glaive throw ability, they will stack up very nicely for you to clear with bombardment. Now let's take a look at a full kill. Starting from War's Retreat, I teleport to the Alcarid Lodestone and head south to the Shanty Pass. Talk to the Rug Merchant and set your destination to Narda. Once here, head down to the southwest into the heart of Gielinor, and then inside, head northeast all the way up to the Sliske's encampment and traverse the threshold. Here is where you'd want to use your potions, both ranging and defense, and then activate your protect from range and rigor prayers. Head up to the north right away, tag Gregorovic, and head up to the wall. For this first trick knife, I don't have the adrenaline to use either devotion or debilitate, so I use anticipation to reduce the damage by 10%. After that, he spawns his first spirit, and I don't need to worry about it because I have my dinosaur chaps perked out with venom blood. After that is the first glaive throw, and I move to a safe location and dodge it completely. Check underneath of you, as normally a spot will spawn directly on top of you, so it's helpful to always move at least one square. For the second trick knife, I use devotion and block the damage completely. He spawns a second spirit, and at this point you should notice that I'm constantly eating my green blubber jellyfish whenever I start to take some damage. This is fine because I don't lose adrenaline from it as I go along, and it keeps my health total high. For the second trick knife, I use debilitate and I take half the damage. You can see that the hit splats are anywhere between 300 and 500 damage. Gregorovic spawns his first round of shadows, and I start to deal with them passively using abilities like Ricochet and Bombardment. They really don't do too much damage, so I'm not worried about taking them out quickly. With the third glaive throw, I head further down to the south and successfully group them all up, so they'll be hit by a single bombardment. With this trick knife, I don't have either devotion or debilitate off of cooldown yet, so I wait for a little bit and then choose to use debilitate. Don't worry about being absolutely perfect with this method. You should have more than enough food if you brought a War Tortoise Beast of Burden and are using the green blubber jellyfish. I start to move back towards the middle as I'm being pushed a little bit too close to the corner for my liking, but I'm making sure to keep at least one square between me and Gregorovic so I don't get melee attacked. He throws his trick knife, and I use devotion to block all of the damage again. At this point, it's just a matter of DPS until I get him to his 60k health total, when he will spawn 4 additional shadows. I continue heading down to the south as to not get pinned into any corners. The shadow spawns him rather far away, so I tag him once and then move back to the wall so he doesn't get too close to any of the other sides to call any other spirits. With all 4 of the shadows built up, they do a decent amount of damage, so I make sure to try and use my AoE abilities whenever they're off of cooldown. I'm trying to group them up by moving down into one corner, and then you'll see I surge across using the tip that I talked about earlier. This didn't super well group them up, but it's enough where I can get them finished off with the rest of my AoE abilities. At this point, it's just a matter of keeping your HP above 0 and finishing the boss. You can make sure to use your threshold abilities manually at this point, and make sure to continue using your defensive abilities when they need to be activated. Don't be afraid to eat more food than you think you need. It's always better to be safe rather than sorry. With this last trick knife, I use debilitate halfway through, and that's totally fine as I still negate about 3,000 to 4,000 damage in total. As Gregorovic's health gets low, I use my ultimate ability Deadshot and finish the kill quickly. With that, we have now defeated all 4 of the God Wars Dungeon 2 bosses, and if you did these all solo, you now have the ability to challenge Telos. While it's a little bit above our range right now, we will definitely get there eventually. You can also attune a portal at War's Retreat now and get here much faster than next time, which is good because you still have a full hour left to get more kills. I really hope you found this guide helpful, and if you did, please consider giving it a like, and if you like more than one of my videos, please consider subscribing. In the next video, we'll finally be moving away from God Wars and start to take a look at another boss that requires venom blood. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Zingy out.